What really happened between takes on one of Hollywood's most beloved films? How did an unlikely actor transform a simple martial arts instructor role into cinematic history? And why did the truth about these iconic scenes remain hidden for decades? Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what Pat Morita finally revealed about his time on the Karate Kid set and how these revelations have reshaped our understanding of this classic film's legacy as of September 2025. Let's dive in. The name Pat Morita might not immediately ring bells for younger viewers, but the character he brought to life, Mr. Miyagi, transcends generations. The wise, enigmatic handyman who teaches Daniel LaRusso the art of karate through unconventional methods like wax on, wax off wasn't just a role in a 1,980 seconds martial arts movie. It was a cultural phenomenon that forever altered how Asian characters were portrayed in American cinema. But behind the calm, measured presence of Mr. Miyagi was a complicated reality. Pat Morita's journey to that role and what happened during filming tells a story far more nuanced than what appeared on screen. The transformation from stand-up comedian to Oscar-nominated actor didn't happen overnight, and the struggles he endured both before and during production shaped his performance in ways few people understand. Born Noriyuki Morita in California in 1932, Pat's early life was marked by extraordinary hardship. At just 2 years old, he was diagnosed with spinal tuberculosis and told he might never walk again. For nearly a decade, he was confined to a sanitarium, strapped to a bed with a full body cast, separated from his family during formative years that would shape his resilient spirit. The sanitarium became his first classroom in human nature. Surrounded by other children fighting their own battles with illness, young Noriyuki watched, listened, and developed an acute sensitivity to the unspoken emotions that would later make his performances so compelling. Nurses became his surrogate family, doctors his first audience, as he learned to use humor to ease his own isolation. The sterile halls and antiseptic smell of the hospital would never leave his memory in sensory details that informed the precise way he would later move through scenes as Mr. Miyagi. Carrying the weight of remembered confinement in every measured step, when he was finally released at 11 years old, America was in the throes of World War II. Like many Japanese Americans, Morita's family was sent to an internment camp, trading one confinement for another. The barbed wire and guard towers at Gila River War Relocation Center in Arizona created boundaries both physical and psychological. Here, Morita witnessed firsthand the dignity with which the older generation of Japanese Americans carried themselves despite the indignity of their circumstances. The precise bows, the careful maintenance of cultural traditions, the quiet strength that he would eventually distill into Mr. Miyagi's character. Inside the camp, daily life continued despite the harsh conditions. Morita observed how families created gardens in the desert sand, how craftsmen fashioned furniture from scrap wood, how elders taught traditional arts to younger generations. These weren't just activities to pass time, they were acts of resistance, preserving identity when everything familiar had been stripped away. This tension between cultural preservation and forced assimilation became a theme Morita understood intimately, one that would resonate throughout his portrayal of Miyagi decades later. These early experiences of isolation and resilience would later inform the quiet dignity he brought to Mr. Miyagi. The young boy who doctors once believed would never walk eventually found strength not just to stand, but to carry the weight of meaningful representation for an entire community. After the war and through high school, Morita worked in his family's Chinese restaurant in Sacramento, ironically, not a Japanese restaurant, as the family calculated that American customers were more comfortable with Chinese food in the aftermath of the war. This early lesson in cultural code switching wasn't lost on young Pat. The daily rhythms of service, the careful attention to detail, and the cultural navigation required to run an Asian restaurant in post-war America all became tools in his developing understanding of performance. Customers expected a certain personality, and Pat, who adopted his Americanized first name during this period, learned to deliver exactly what people wanted to see. The restaurant became his first stage. Greeting customers, Morita would shift seamlessly between identities, more American, with certain patrons, playing up his heritage with others who seemed to expect it. He learned to read rooms, gauge reactions, and adjust his presentation accordingly. All the while, he was developing the nuanced understanding of cultural expectations that would later allow him to subvert stereotypes so effectively as Mr. Miyagi. During the day, he worked with his hands, precisely arranging plates and managing the restaurant. At night, he dreamed of something else: comedy clubs and stages, where he could channel his natural charisma. His first stage name, the Hip Nip, reflects the uncomfortable racial realities of the entertainment industry he was trying to enter. He knew that to succeed, he would need to both acknowledge and transcend the stereotypes that awaited him. The comedy circuit of the late 1950 seconds and early 1960 seconds was hardly welcoming to Asian American performers. Club owners often expected Marita to lean into racial caricatures, to make himself the punchline rather than the comedian delivering it. Instead, he developed material that walked a careful line, acknowledging his heritage while subtly challenging audience expectations. This balancing act prepared him for the much bigger platform Hollywood would eventually provide. The break came when Marita decided to leave the restaurant business behind and pursue entertainment full-time. In his 30s, far later than most actors begin their careers, he moved to Los Angeles with nothing but determination and an innate understanding of how to connect with audiences. His early comedy sets focused on his Japanese-American identity, finding humor in cultural differences while subtly educating audiences. This ability to disarm viewers with humor while conveying deeper truths would later serve him well as Miyagi. Los Angeles in the 1960 seconds offered limited opportunities for Asian actors. The roles available were typically one-dimensional: inscrutable villains, exotic foreigners, or comedic sidekicks with exaggerated accents. Morita auditioned for whatever came his way, sometimes playing into stereotypes to get his foot in the door. Each small role was a building block, each stereotype an opportunity to inject humanity into characters that weren't written with depth. He was playing the long game, accumulating screen time and industry relationships that would eventually lead to something more substantial. By the early 1970 seconds, Morita had landed small roles on shows like Sanford and Son and MAS times H, but his first significant break came as Arnold on Happy Days. The good-natured owner of the drive-in, the restaurant became a recurring character, giving Morita steady work and wider recognition. But even as he found success playing Arnold, Morita yearned for roles with more substance, characters that reflected the depth and complexity he knew existed in the Asian American experience. Behind the scenes at Happy Days, Morita became a beloved figure among the cast and crew. Always professional, always prepared, he brought a warmth to the set that extended beyond his on-screen character. Yet in interviews given years later, he admitted to a constant internal struggle, grateful for the opportunity, while increasingly frustrated by the limitations of his role. Arnold was likable but one-dimensional, a supporting character whose primary purpose was to facilitate the development of the show's white protagonists. Marita understood the dynamics at play but believed that television and film could and should do better, and that's when everything changed. In 1984, director John Avildsen was casting for a film called The Karate Kid. The script called for an Okinawan martial arts instructor who would mentor a bullied teenager. Despite Morita's growing television fame, the studio executives were hesitant. They knew him as a comedian, not a dramatic actor. And perhaps more tellingly, they weren't convinced American audiences were ready to see an Asian actor in such a nuanced, central role. What many don't realize is that Morita wasn't even the first choice for Mr. Miyagi. The studio reportedly approached Japanese actor Toshiro Mifune, known for his work in Akira Kurosawa's films. When that didn't materialize, they considered several other actors before Morita's name came up. The studio's resistance was so strong that Morita allegedly had to do 5 separate auditions before landing the role that would define his career. Producer Jerry Weintraub reportedly needed significant convincing to approve Morita's casting. "Not the guy from Happy Days," was his alleged initial reaction. The studio wanted someone with martial arts experience, someone who could more easily fit their preconception of what a karate master should be. But director Avildsen saw something in Morita's auditions that transcended technical skills, a genuine emotional intelligence, and quiet dignity that perfectly embodied Miyagi's essence. Here's where it gets complicated. According to what Marita finally revealed years later, he faced two significant challenges walking onto the Karate Kid set. First, he had absolutely no martial arts training whatsoever, a fact that would seem disqualifying for the role of a karate master. Second, he was fighting against the studio's perception of him as just a comedian. Every day on set became a dual performance, convincing the crew he could embody Miyagi's wisdom while learning the physical movements that would make the character believable. The production hired martial arts, choreographers, and trainers to work with Marita between scenes. While young Macchio was perfecting the crane kick, Marita was learning basic forms and movements from scratch. In one of his last interviews, Marita admitted to practicing hand positions and stances in his hotel room late into the night, terrified of looking inauthentic on camera the next day. "I wasn't teaching Ralph karate," he reportedly said. "The choreographers were teaching both of us, and I was just trying to stay one lesson ahead." This behind-the-scenes struggle informed Miyagi's teaching style in unexpected ways. The character's emphasis on philosophy over technique, on mental discipline over physical prowess, mirrored Morita's own approach to the role. Unable to rely on martial arts expertise, he leaned into the aspects of the character he could authentically embody: wisdom, patience, and emotional truth. The result was a performance far more nuanced than what might have emerged had an experienced martial artist been cast. What made Morita's achievement even more remarkable was the limited preparation time. Tight production schedules meant he sometimes received script pages just days before shooting key scenes. The emotional centerpiece of the film, Miyagi's drunken revelation about losing his wife and son, was reportedly filmed with minimal rehearsal. Morita drew on his own family's internment experience, his understanding of cultural trauma, and his ability to access deep emotional truths to deliver a performance so powerful that it transcended the teen-oriented sports film around it. The peak Karate Kid era transformed Morita's life and career. When the film released in June 1984, audiences and critics alike were stunned by the emotional depth he brought to Mr. Miyagi. The scene where a drunk Miyagi reveals the loss of his wife and child while stationed at Manzanar internment camp has been cited by film scholars as one of the most powerful portrayals of Japanese-American wartime experience ever, depicted in mainstream cinema. What Morita revealed later was how personal that scene was for him. Though he didn't lose a family at Manzanar, he understood the crushing weight of the internment experience. The pain in Miyagi's eyes wasn't just acting, it was Marita channeling collective cultural trauma into a character that millions of viewers would come to love. For a brief moment, Hollywood allowed an authentic glimpse into a history it had largely ignored, all through the vehicle of what was ostensibly a teenage martial arts movie. The scene required multiple takes, not because Morita couldn't deliver the emotion required, but because the rawness of his performance sometimes overwhelmed the crew. According to production assistants who were present, the set fell completely silent during these takes, an unusual occurrence in the typically bustling environment of a film shoot. Crew members who had worked with veteran actors for decades reportedly approached Morita afterward to express how moved they were. This validation from industry professionals meant more to him than the subsequent award nominations, as he confided to friends years later. The film's success led to 3 sequels, with Morita reprising his role in each one, but behind the scenes, tensions were brewing. In interviews given shortly before his death in 2005, Morita spoke candidly about the struggles he faced as the franchise continued. While the original film had balanced Miyagi's character development with the main plot, subsequent films increasingly relegated him to the sidelines, emphasizing more action and less of the cultural nuance that had made the original special. The second film, which took the characters to Okinawa to explore Miyagi's past, initially excited Marita. Here was an opportunity to deepen the character, to explore Japanese culture more authentically, to build on the foundation of the first film. But as production progressed, he reportedly grew frustrated with how the script handled these elements. Cultural details were sometimes sacrificed for plot convenience, historical nuances flattened for broader appeal. Though still committed to the role, Morita began to feel the weight of representation more heavily, understanding that for many American viewers, Miyagi was their primary exposure to Japanese culture. Morita reportedly pushed back against some of these changes, advocating for storylines that would continue to develop Miyagi's character with authenticity and respect. According to production sources, these creative differences created occasional tension on set, particularly during the third film. Though always professional, Morita felt protective of Miyagi and what the character represented to Asian American viewers, starving for representation beyond stereotypes. By the fourth film, The Next Karate Kid, featuring a young Hilary Swank rather than Ralph Macchio, the franchise had evolved substantially. Morita remained the connecting thread, but the chemistry that had made the original film so special was noticeably absent. On set, Morita continued to bring his full commitment to the role, but privately expressed concern that the franchise was drifting from its emotional core. The film performed poorly compared to its predecessors, effectively ending the original series. Another revelation that surprised many fans came when Morita disclosed that he and Ralph Macchio, who played Daniel LaRusso, didn't maintain a close relationship off-screen. Unlike the deep bond between their characters, the actors had a cordial but primarily professional connection. This isn't uncommon in Hollywood, but it contradicted the popular imagination of the cast as a tight-knit family. Still, the on-screen chemistry between them was undeniable, a testament to both actors' talents rather than a reflection of real-life closeness. The working relationship between Morita and Macchio was nonetheless built on mutual respect. During filming, Macchio reportedly observed how meticulously Morita prepared for scenes, studying the script and working with the martial arts coordinators to ensure that every movement reflected Miyagi's character. This dedication impressed the younger actor, who was still early in his career. For his part, Morita appreciated Macchio's natural ability to project vulnerability and determination, qualities that made their scenes together resonate with audiences. By the mid-1990 seconds, after the Karate Kid franchise had run its course, Morita found himself in a difficult position, familiar to many actors closely identified with iconic roles. Casting directors struggled to see him as anyone but Mr. Miyagi. Though the role had brought him an Oscar nomination and international fame, it also created a box that proved difficult to escape. The typecasting affected Morita deeply. Having finally broken through the limited roles typically offered to Asian actors, he now faced a different kind of limitation. Producers either wanted him to essentially play Miyagi again, wise, spiritual, speaking in aphorisms, or they couldn't envision him in their projects at all. The comedy background that had sustained him before The Karate Kid was largely forgotten by an industry with a short memory, while dramatic roles that might have showcased different aspects of his talent rarely came his way. In one of his most candid interviews, given just months before his passing, Morita reflected on this double-edged sword. "Miyagi blessed my life and career in ways I could never have imagined," he reportedly said. "But there were days I wish people could see beyond the headband and the bonsai trees." This period marked a slow decline in the quality of roles offered to him, even as his portrayal of Miyagi was being celebrated as groundbreaking. The aftershock of typecasting led Morita to accept roles in less prestigious productions to maintain his career. He voiced characters in animated series, appeared in direct-to-video projects, and took smaller parts that often played on audience recognition of his Miyagi persona. Behind the scenes, according to close friends, this professional plateau took a toll on his spirits. The man who had brought such dignity to the screen found fewer opportunities to display the full range of his talents as he aged. During this period, Morita also struggled with personal demons. Though rarely discussed publicly during his lifetime, he battled alcoholism for many years. Friends have suggested that this struggle intensified during the professional drought. Following the Karate Kid series, the pressure of having reached the pinnacle of success but being unable to sustain it, weighing heavily on him. The contrast between the disciplined, centered Miyagi and Morita's private struggles created a painful irony that he acknowledged only to those closest to him. What Morita finally confirmed in his later years was something many had suspected but few had documented. Despite playing one of cinema's most famous martial arts instructors, he never became proficient in karate. The graceful movements viewers witnessed were the result of intensive coaching before each scene, clever camera work, and Morita's natural ability to project the philosophical essence of martial arts even without technical mastery. "I knew the heart of karate better than the hands," he reportedly told one interviewer. This admission reflected Morita's broader approach to acting, focusing on emotional truth rather than technical precision. The wisdom in Miyagi's teachings came not from Morita's knowledge of martial arts but from his understanding of how discipline and mindfulness can transform a life. Having rebuilt himself multiple times from the child, told he would never walk to the restaurant worker who became a comedian to the comedian who became a dramatic actor. Morita understood transformation intimately. This authentic understanding of personal growth gave Miyagi's teachings their resonance. By late 2005, Morita's health had begun to decline. At 73, he suffered from kidney issues requiring dialysis, reportedly complicated by years of alcohol use, another revelation that surprised fans who knew only his professional image. On the 24th of November 2005, Pat Morita passed away in Las Vegas from kidney failure, leaving behind a complex legacy that extended far beyond his most famous role. Morita's passing prompted an outpouring of tributes from colleagues and fans alike. Ralph Macchio issued a statement calling him a truly generous actor whose heart was as big as his talent. Directors who had worked with him throughout his career spoke of his professionalism and the quiet dignity he brought to every set. But perhaps most moving were the responses from Asian American actors who credited Morita with opening doors that had previously been closed, proving that an Asian character could be central to a mainstream American film's success. Where is Pat Morita's influence now, 20 years after his passing, in ways that would likely both surprise and move him? In 2018, YouTube Premium, later Netflix, launched Cobra Kai, a series continuing the Karate Kid story, with many original cast members though, of course without Morita. The show has not only introduced Mr. Miyagi to a new generation, but has treated the character with reverence, keeping his philosophy central to the narrative even in his physical absence. The creators of Cobra Kai have acknowledged their debt to Morita in numerous interviews. Though the series explores the perspective of Johnny Lawrence William Zabka, the original film's antagonist, it never undermines Miyagi's wisdom or importance. Instead, his teachings form the moral compass of the show, with characters repeatedly reflecting on what Miyagi would have done in difficult situations. This posthumous influence speaks to the enduring power of the character Morita created. In the years since Cobra Kai's debut, a new generation of viewers has discovered the original films. Streaming platforms report significant viewership of the 1984 classic, with many young viewers expressing surprise at the emotional depth of what they expected to be simply an action film. Social media comments frequently highlight Morita's performance as the element that elevates the film beyond its genre. Trapping's a testament to how effectively he transcended stereotypes to create something timeless. Ralph Macchio, in numerous interviews promoting Cobra Kai, has spoken with increasing openness about Morita's contributions and challenges. "Without Pat, there is no Karate Kid," Macchio stated in a 2021 interview. "What he brought to Miyagi came from somewhere deep and real that none of us fully understood at the time." This posthumous recognition acknowledges what Morita had tried to express in his final years, that the magic of Miyagi came from his own experiences of pain, resilience, and cultural navigation. The original Karate Kid film, released with modest expectations in 1984, has generated a franchise worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The first film alone, made on a reported budget of approximately $8 million, earned over $90 million domestically. Morita's performance earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor, the first for an Asian American in that category since Sessue Hayakawa for The Bridge on the River Kwai in 1957. The film's cultural impact extended far beyond box office numbers. Wax on, wax off entered the lexicon as shorthand for learning through indirect methods. The dot, crane kick became one of cinema's most recognizable physical movements. Most significantly, Miyagi joined a very short list of Asian characters in American film portrayed with complexity, agency, and humanity. A list that remained unfortunately brief for decades after Morita's groundbreaking performance. Merchandise related to the franchise continues to generate revenue today, from action figures to t-shirts bearing Miyagi's sayings to bonsai tree starter kits. The character's cultural fingerprint remains visible in popular culture. What's notable about this merchandise is how often it centers Miyagi, rather than the film's protagonist, a rare instance of an Asian character becoming the most marketable element of a mainstream American franchise. Beyond the numbers, Morita's portrayal of Mr. Miyagi transformed how Asian characters could be depicted in American cinema. Before Miyagi, Asian men were often limited to roles as villains, comic relief, or inscrutable foreigners. Miyagi was complex, heroic, vulnerable, and wise, a character with a full emotional spectrum rarely afforded to Asian actors at that time. This groundbreaking representation laid groundwork for the greater diversity we're finally beginning to see in Hollywood today. Film scholars have noted how Morita's performance subtly subverted expectations, even while working within a conventional narrative framework. He spoke with an accent, but his English was never played for laughs. He embodied traditional values, but never became a stereotype. He mentored a white protagonist, but maintained his own agency and story arc. These nuances, delivered through Morita's carefully calibrated performance, challenged the industry's assumptions about how Asian characters could function in American storytelling. In recent years, as conversations about representation have become more sophisticated, Morita's work has been re-examined with new appreciation. Contemporary Asian American actors frequently cite him as an influence and inspiration, not just for his on-screen achievements, but for navigating an industry that offered limited opportunities with grace and persistence. His career path, with its struggles and breakthroughs, serves as both blueprint and warning for those following in his footsteps. Why does Pat Morita's story matter now, 2 decades after his death? In an era where conversations about authentic representation have moved to the forefront of cultural discussion, Morita stands as both pioneer and cautionary tale. He achieved extraordinary success by bringing humanity and dignity to a character at a time when such roles for Asian actors were vanishingly rare. Yet he also experienced the limitations of an industry that often struggled to see beyond its own stereotypes, even for those who had proven their exceptional talent. The revelations about his time on The Karate Kid, his lack of martial arts training, the resistance to his casting, the personal significance of the internment camp scene add layers to our understanding of his achievement. What appeared effortless on screen was the result of meticulous preparation, personal resilience, and the transformation of lived experience into art. Morita's journey reminds us that authentic representation isn't just about who appears on screen, but about the depth and humanity they're allowed to bring to their roles. For younger Asian American actors working today in a somewhat more inclusive industry, Morita's example offers both inspiration and perspective. The opportunities now available, leading roles, complex characters, stories centered on Asian American experiences, exist in part because of the doors Morita helped open. At the same time, his post-Karate Kid career illustrates how even breakthrough success doesn't guarantee lasting change, either for individual performers or for the industry as a whole. Morita's journey reminds us that representation isn't just about seeing diverse faces on screen, it's about allowing those performers the full range of human experience in their roles and careers. The battle he fought silently, bringing authenticity to Mr. Miyagi while navigating a system not designed for his success, opened doors through which others have since walked. Each barrier-breaking Asian actor in Hollywood today, from Michelle Yeoh to Steven Yeun to Awkwafina, walks a path that Morita helped clear. In the end, this isn't just a story about a beloved movie character. It's about how a man transformed his own experiences of pain and resilience into art that touched millions. Pat Morita brought his full humanity to Mr. Miyagi, the wisdom hard-earned through childhood illness, the dignity maintained despite internment, the humor developed as survival and created something timeless. As we look back on what Pat Morita finally confirmed about his time on the Karate Kid set, perhaps the most powerful revelation is that great performances often come at personal cost. The wisdom in Miyagi's eyes reflected Morita's own journey through America's complicated landscape of opportunity and limitation. His legacy lives on not just in catchphrases like wax on, wax off, but in the expanded possibilities he created for those who followed. If you learned something new about the man behind Mr. Miyagi, or have thoughts about how his pioneering work influenced today's cinema landscape, share them in the comments below. What other overlooked Hollywood pioneers should we explore next? Subscribe for more untold stories behind the films and characters that shaped our culture, because sometimes the most powerful scenes happen when the cameras stop rolling.